All right. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Hammercast. I didn't preface that it's going to be a fun filled episode. Sometimes I let people know that, sometimes just let them assume or find out for themselves. But this is going to be a very fun one. And especially because it is something that I have not yet talked about, or I haven't talked about in quite a while, I should say. I have had the topic brought up on the past episodes. We're going to be talking all about gut health with Diego Reyes. And I, more and more, I don't really consider myself old, um, but I am getting older. We're all getting older. That's the thing, It's like it
True.
reminds me. I see a. I remember years ago somebody made the joke that like someone will show you, oh, here's a picture of me when I was younger. It's like, yeah, no kidding. If there's any picture of you, it's from when you were younger. That's just by definition. So we're all getting older, and I think that as our age starts to set in, a lot of the uncollected debts of our habits and other things like that have a tendency to creep up, and it's up to us to pay them off. One of those things is certainly our health, and particularly gut health, which is supremely important. So, we're going to talk all about that. And before we dive in, I'm going to remind my listeners, if this is the first time you're listening in, or maybe you've listened in a couple times before, if you have not already, be sure to go grab a copy of my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. As the name implies, it's only 9 minutes to do. And what is really cool about it is, we're going to be talking about gut health on here and how that's such a natural and fundamental part of what it means to be a human. And the same thing is true about the movements that I put in the 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge, in that they're based around your gait pattern, so meaning your walking pattern. So it's like it takes 30 seconds to learn all of the different moves, and you're going to be off to the races. And you don't have to put your regular training to the side. You can put it in either at the beginning as an extended warm up, or at the end as a finisher. You can do it on in between days. You can do it as a standalone program. But I've gotten a lot of very nice feedback from people who have gone through it, saying they feel stronger, better tied together, something I hear quite a bit of, a lot more resilient. So 9minutechallenge.com, you get your own free copy. And that is the number 9minutechallenge.com. For God's sake, don't type in NINE minute challenge. You'll still get there, but like, why waste the keystrokes? That's the thing I don't understand. Anyway, rant is over, and the podcast has officially begun. Diego, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Alex, thank you for having me today. I know I never really, this is my first person I got approached by X slash Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Um,
Twitter, for sure.
I kind of, yeah, Twitter.
I'll never call it
But
X, man.
yeah, I don't even know about all that, but they got Elon doing something. But yeah, so yeah, because I just kind of, I don't really, post that much. I mean, I do post on that platform, but a lot of it's just repurposed from my, IG, my Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
because I got a lot of socials going out right now, and I'm, getting guys into the socials to run it for me a little bit. And so, yeah, it's been definitely a great opportunity to get, on that platform and, explain to your listeners like a little bit about what's the center of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I guess it is sort of a miracle because I'm not really on Twitter all that often. It's a huge quagmire. Like I used to post on there all the time, and it's like you get like one or two likes, from like the usual suspects. And I always appreciated when people would like this stuff, but it's like, I don't, that's one algorithm I don't think I'll ever crack. It's like, I don't know how. It seems the only way to get traction is to have all sorts of stupid hot takes on things, and then people just out of pure outrage will like
Yeah.
repost it, and they're angry or whatever. But I saw your tweets about gut health, and this is something that I've been very interested in quite some time. And I couldn't help but want to reach out. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I find especially interesting about it is you talked about it as being the center of your body, and it's physically true, but in terms of our health, uh, it's also like of the utmost importance for a wide variety of other things. So, um, I'm just curious because you're a young guy, like what's your origin
Mhm.
story with getting so fascinated with we'll say health in general, but then gut health in particular.
Yeah. So I guess it all started when I was playing, I was playing collegiate football, and it's kind of a story. So I was playing collegiate football, and I was just in school, kind of going through the motions and everything, but I was super into fitness. And I say fitness is more like working out, training, and a little bit into the nutritional side. But I essentially jumped out of college football and really just trying to master the art of nutrition. And I really got into it with like nutrition, bodybuilding, macros, and things like that. And at the time, I was actually running a supplement store here in Minnesota. I was, running a local supplement store, and I was learning everything about supplements and herbs. And so I got like, that was, more so the introduction of a functional, AKA root cause approach to things. And from there, I actually was also a trainer at a gym. So I was a personal trainer. So I would be training people in the morning, like early mornings, and then I would be going over to my shop and just obviously doing consulting, helping, individuals with whatever supplemental needs they need. Um, and throughout all that, I discovered a whole world of functional medicine, functional nutrition, you can call it. And I really understood how, like, taking these root causes approach to like healing and optimization can better my outcomes. Because at the time I was starting my coaching practice, and I was like, what can I do to give my clients even better results? What can I do to, make them even feel better, have more vitality, you know? And so, when I jumped in, I was like, well, it all starts with, the gut. I mean, because we digest and assimilate nutrients and food, and it has to get synthesized and all of that. So, when I first dove into gut, I was like, because of someone that was close to me, that was, a friend at the time, she was struggling with, the worst IBS, and she had gastroparesis. I can't off the top of my head right now, but so she got like an IBS label, but she was struggling with the worst of the worst gut issues for like the longest time. And if you have IBS and you're listening to this right now, you probably know the story. Your gut, they just tell you you got to live with it. Just stick to low FODMAP, perhaps. And no matter what, she just was dealing with the worst. Um, you know, Abdominal pain, bloating, constipation, and then we'll get into it like fatigue and brain fog. And so what I did was I really dove into the gut, and actually she was on SSRIs, which this is not medical advice, but we were, obviously we'll get into that, but it's connected. And so, I was like, because your serotonin is housed in your gut, and so 95% of it. And so I was like, she was on all this stuff, PPIs, which are proton pump inhibitors. And I was like, what? I got to fix her. Like, I was like, we got to do something about this. So I dove in, and, I was, speaking with a lot of consultants in the area that worked at alternative clinics and things like that, but they just didn't have any answers. So what I did was just dove into a lot of different research within the gut microbiome, and then got some mentors that helped coach me through it and learn and acquire all the knowledge that I needed. And soon from that, I was able to help her actually get to the root cause of her IBS, which was SIBO and leaky gut, if you're not familiar. um, and actually get her off the SSRI safely, tapered off, and now she's doing way better than ever. So that's kind of like a story, just seeing everyone, just suffer, and just me being the person I am. I think just the way that I've been raised, just having that willingness to help people. And I've always been into obviously my health and my fitness. So and I didn't want to be like everyone else. I didn't want to just be like talking about different types of training that they could be doing and things like that. I wanted to actually be, diversify myself into the functional medicine, functional nutritional realm of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then back to what I was saying is that I wanted to blend the two together, because it's either, so most people are taking dogmatic approaches to wellness. They're like, you got to follow this high protein macro, type training. And then you got to get all these, these fitness. And then you got like the other people that's like a dietitian, a dietetic. So you got like a personal trainer and you got like a dietitian, and they're just fighting. They just have their own dogmatic ways. But as me, like as I come, I'm a hybrid. So I want to blend the two together to create maximum outcome, because the people today need both. Okay. So when someone's struggling with weight loss, okay, or they have like they're overweight, when someone comes in, they're overweight, they're not just dealing with, body fat issues. They got either, just a bunch of inflammation within the GI tract. They got, usually like women, they got poor thyroid health. They have, maybe they have an autoimmune issue. They have blood sugar imbalance, insulin resistance. They have chronic stress. And so it's much more than just give them a caloric deficit and train them. It's more so like we got to get to these underlying root causes for them to, feel their best, but also look their best, because that's what I'm trying to do here. Like a motto I like to say is, I get you, I give you what you need and get you what you want. Because like most people just want to look good, but they don't want to, they're just like, all right, well, I guess I'll feel good. But, that's the model here is that I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think people have a tendency to separate uh, health from fitness, and it didn't used to be like that. I mean, there was even a magazine. It was Health and Fitness is what it was called. It was just like the two couldn't be viewed differently. It was like they all kind of worked together, and I think I'd be curious as to what happened to cause this sort of like separation of these two things. But it's good to see that that it's coming back because you're right. I mean, I see this a lot. In fact, most people seem like um, they've got like a nutritionist or a dietitian who doesn't lift, or they've got like a trainer who, maybe
That guy.
does, watch what he or she eats or whatever, but can't really explain why. Like you need to have a more holistic approach. And I think of guys like Paul Chek, who's like pretty much the godfather of functional fitness, but he's always had that sort of like a holistic
Mhm.
approach to him. And I think early on people kind of looked at him a little bit cockeyed because they were like, like what's all this mumbo jumbo about your eating and all this other stuff. But it's interesting that you would choose the gut in particular because, well, I mean, to me it makes perfect sense. But I'm sure that you get a lot of people who are like, okay, why the gut? Like you just eat, it digests, and what's the big deal?
Yeah. Well, so it's kind of like so functional health coach, functional nutrition, functional medicine. What is that? Well, your body has 11 systems, like the endocrine, the lymphatic, the immune. Okay. And they all work together. But in Western conventional medicine, they work in isolation. You
Mm-hmm.
go see an endocrinologist, they look at your thyroid. You go
Yeah.
see a gastroenterologist, they look at your gut. And the flaw there is that your body works in unison, like I just said. So all those systems create functions, and those functions are how you feel. So inevitably, you know, correcting the gut is a part of all the other ecosystems within the body. Now, we are talking about gut in this, and I do tons of gut, but I'm also doing thyroid health, hormone health,
Mm-hmm.
blood sugar health, all of that. And so, when we want to talk about the gut pretty much, influences a lot of systems in the body because it is taking in everything and then obviously excreting things out. Um, so taking a gut centric approach is, super, ideal almost for looking and feeling your best because it obviously has a dictates how well you absorb and assimilate the nutrients that you eat. It also helps with even like how tight you are around the waist. Even that has a thing with it as well. And just kind of like everything like that. So yeah.
Now, here's something that I've heard on a number of occasions that the gut is the second brain. And it's interesting too because even linguistically we hear, trust your gut, listen to your gut. So it's like there's like almost on like a subconscious level, people seem to understand the importance of your gut health and following your gut, quote unquote. But drawing on like what you've talked about up till now, what are some of the impacts that our gut can have on not just how we feel, because you mentioned how all these systems impact how we feel,
Mhm.
but also how we act. Just one example is my understanding is that if the bacteria in your gut is balanced in the wrong direction, meaning toward like the bad bacteria, it's going to crave more sugar. So that is going to influence your decisions on your eating, so that you'll eat more sugar to feed more of these, let's say,
Yeah.
less helpful bacteria. Can you give us maybe some, I'll say, like kind of a sweeping look at the impact of the gut as our second brain, and like what that all entails for us in our day to day life?
Yeah, 100%. So actually, on big topic right now is Ozempic, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's actually called GLP-1, which is glucagon like peptide. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually in the gut. So, like the way that ghrelin and leptin work in your body, which are two hormones that are actually, that come from the brain for you to, um, have the hunger cue for food, but then also to burn fat because leptin burns fat. And it actually comes from your gut. So, just kind of what you're saying, if your bacteria is off, and you're having an imbalance of different types of bacteria, that will obviously give you different cravings for sugar, because when your gut is, imbalanced and there's, negative bacteria, there's a lot of yeast, and yeast feeds off sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you get that sugar effect, and then going into how it can, be a second brain, is that your neurotransmitters are housed in the gut, like norepinephrine, adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin. Okay. And so those neurotransmitters have to get synthesized. And when there's an imbalance in the gut microbiota, the synthesization obviously gets hindered. And about 95% of your serotonin is housed in your gut. So when pretty much the gut is off, it, you know, eradicates the communication between your brain. And so now you're not producing as much serotonin as you should, or you're not producing as much dopamine as you should. And so what that does then is put people in like a depressive type state, or they deal with other issues like neurological issues such as ADHD, OCD. And then there's actually a flaw here, because when we look at people with diabetes or cancer, we're kind of like, okay, there was something that put them in that state. And when people are dealing with these mental health issues, they think that the person's just acting like they have like these issues, and they're just saying that they do. But it's actually like, it's almost as physical as like a diabetes. Like, you obviously have a dysfunctions in your body that you became a diabetic from the lifestyle you have. So you have like, insulin resistance and, high inflammation. It's almost the same when you're dealing with these mental health issues. You have, perhaps one is a neurotransmitter deficiency. So you don't have enough serotonin in your brain. And what can that stem from? Poor gut health, And so we look at it as like, it's like, we don't think of these mental health issues like they're issues like being overweight, hypothyroidism, things like that. We don't look at it like that, but there is a relationship there. And so, going back into it, when we're talking about gut, we can talk about, the gut microbiome, and then we can talk about liver function, because your liver function is a whole ecosystem as well, because you have, your large intestine, your small intestine, colon, say large, and then you have your whole liver. And then inside your liver, you have phases inside your liver that work on your detoxification of toxins or excess estrogen. So I don't want to get too off topic here, but if the body and if the liver and the gut have, poor detox pathways, then your body can accumulate an overabundance of toxins, which is getting more and more popular today. I'm sure you see it a lot, as the toxins and all that, and cellular inflammation, which a lot of it is coming from the liver, because the body's ability to neutralize and excrete the toxin has been pretty much hindered, you could say. And so now there's a buildup of toxins, which then what happens is that it just causes a lot of inflammation.
Right.
And that inflammation can leak into the brain from a leaky gut. So now I'm getting all over the place, but here, a lot of the times I see is that people that struggle with leaky gut, which is like another word is intestinal permeability. So essentially think about it as like your gut lining is like two, they're held together. They're like two pathways that are pretty much the separation between your bloodstream and your GI tract. And they're held together by something called zonulin, which pretty much are the connectors, you could say, between the cells for the gut lining. And when those become permeable, which is like another word like leak, or they split, then now those inflammation, undigested food and things can leak into the bloodstream. And then that will cause something called neural inflammation. So then you get a bunch of inflammation within your brain, which then causes a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. So, we kind of build up on, how, your neurotransmitters are housed in your gut, how, your liver will detox toxins, but if you have poor liver function because of poor gut health, that can impact the toxin burden within your body, which then will drive inflammation. But then also having leaky gut and having those undigested food and those bad bacteria flow into the bloodstream will also cause that immunological response, aka the inflammatory response, causing neural inflammation.
Very interesting that you mentioned this too, because now that I think about it, I think about I'm sure you've spent plenty of time reading and listening to Dr. Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson's diet, because both of them have suffered. I think Michaela in particular suffered from a lot of issues that she she says were more or less eliminated by this really restrictive diet that she has. So is this an issue of like chicken and egg? It's like the gut health caused the problem, or this was a pre-existing issue that we can use the gut as like let's say a tool to sort of like get rid of some of these neurological disorders and things of that nature. It is well, in your opinion, is there like a chicken and egg sort of a thing, or is it really more just going in one direction, and we can be pretty sure that it's like gut health related issues, or
Mhm.
perhaps the reverse?
Yeah. So, you know, trauma and stress and emotional stress. Um, so back to what I'm saying, like everything is connected. So a lot of times, like, when people have poor gut function, it's not that their gut just woke up one day and just was like, all right, I'm gonna exacerbate and have all these problems. What happens is that there has been a process that put that person there. And so with some people, they just have so much stress, maybe unresolved trauma, things like that. And it disturbs the microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it imbalanced and things like that. What then happens then is obviously you get the symptoms of poor gut health.
Mm-hmm.
But to say that that poor gut health is the true root cause of your issues would be kind of flawed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it's triggering your symptoms of mental health issues because your gut's off, but it's also not the true reason that you are having these problems. And I see this all the time. And so, like, when people are dealing with a lot of emotional stress, toxic relationships, you know, um, past experiences that really messed them up, it just exacerbated them in their body to go just straight into fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
and just, start causing all these problems within their gut, within their immune system, within their thyroid. And so, you know, it almost is almost like a chicken and egg thing, but it can come from either side, you know. Like you can have mental health issues that have nothing to do with your gut. Okay. But I always like to say, um, you know, biology over psychology or physiology over psychology. What that means is that if you are someone who's struggling with these bad mental health issues and you just go talk it with a therapist, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the true reason why you're having these issues, you know? And so, like, the number one thing, and like, this is just, it's clear in studies, like, when you fix your diet, you fix your mood, you know? And like, everyone knows how good they feel after they use the bathroom, like poop. So, like, exactly. So, it's like, it's just all eradication system, but kind of that was kind of a topic on what you were saying, but yeah, it could come from either side.
It's interesting that you point this out because um, you talking about biology over psychology or physiology over psychology.
Mhm.
One of the things that, and I'm not the first person to make this observation, but it's often easier to impact your mental state or your mindset through your body than it is the reverse. Meaning, we talk about mindset, positive thinking, all this other stuff. But very often, what it really takes to get people to change their outlook, change their worldview, and things like that, you have to go through the body first. And on the fitness side of things, that means, let's say, being consistent with your training, working toward a worthy goal that you're actually excited about, having little benchmarks along the way that show you that you're on the right track. So it's like once you can learn how to do that, it's very easy to extrapolate the process that it takes to get fit or get strong. and then start applying that to other things. So even though those are two completely separate things that we're talking about, it's interesting to see the mirror image of biology and physiology before psychology, meaning the body before the brain, as a means of impacting the brain itself.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. There is a strong correlation there. And so like I got people that come to me and they're like, I've been with a therapist for X amount of time, and they're like, I feel so much better, but I've been with a therapist when they've been working with me because we've corrected the body internally.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's just like it just goes to say that it just all starts within you, truthfully, and just get a little deeper, obviously. And we look at like the gut and stuff like that.
What are some foods, by the way, that people tend to, or that tend to cause people gut issues? Because when I think about stuff like this, I think, well, you just talked about trauma, and a lot of times people have a tendency to turn toward food and drink as a way of trying to sort of soothe their mental state. And so a lot of times, what are they doing? They're eating sweets, they're drinking a lot of alcohol. Are these things that have a negative impact on the gut, and they just sort of start like a feedback loop where it's like, you know, I use this to make myself feel better, and now I'm craving it, and so in order to feel better, I have to, eat these sweets, or I've got to drink this alcohol. Like, are 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 there particular foods that have a almost universal negative impact on gut health? And if so, like what are they?
Yeah. So number one is alcohol. Alcohol is terrible on your gut microbiome, which, by the way, it's not off topic though. Antibiotics destroy the gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have rounded antibiotics, that will inevitably, cause you to have some imbalances there. But, going back to what you're saying, alcohol for sure, it's a toxin in the body, not good. Artificial sweeteners are a big one. When we get into the calorie mantra, artificial sweeteners, all that, like do what you want, you know. If someone's, trying to opt for a low calorie diet and they're in a deficit and they fed themselves up properly and they're, cutting, um, you know, do what you can about staying away from artificial sweeteners. I think that definitely is a big driver to a lot of gut issues. A lot of people that are in the fitness realm, like you'll see a lot of people that are very, relatively fit, they look good, but they have a lot of these gut issues, and it's because of these artificial sweeteners.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking all this pre-workout, they're just all this caffeine, all this different types of shakes or protein, all these nutritious bars that are like, supposed to be, healthy, but they actually just fill with a bunch of preservatives.
Yeah.
Going into preservatives as well. Artificial sweeteners, additives are a big one, and so like, a little sneak peek on like inside my program, what I do with someone is that we run a 5R gut protocol. Okay. Remove, reduce, remove, replace, reinoculate, repair. And the first step is to reduce. We have to reduce the things that negatively affect the gut.
Mm-hmm.
So majority of the time, like I just said, artificial sweeteners, alcohol, caffeine and coffee, sometimes the acidity. Okay. Gluten, wheat, corn, soy, dairy. Okay. A big part of, because so there's a difference between gut health and gut healing.
Mm-hmm.
So a big part of the gut healing process in gut health too would be to eliminate the things that negatively affect it. So just like what I said, those food dyes, red 40, yellow 5, blue 1, all these things disturb the microbiome, which then also will disturb your mental health because there's a relationship, just like what we built on and just said. So a majority of the time, we have to remove the things that negatively affect the gut. So a big one is also industrial seed oils, omega-6, canola oil, palm oil, kernel oil, all these things just drive inflammation within the GI tract. And they're essentially in like almost everything that's pretty much man-made, factory-made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you bring this up because I know there's a big movement against seed oils, or at least, I mean, if you browse Twitter, it's all over the place. I don't know if you're really hearing it a lot on like mainstream media or anything like that, but one of the things that seems to be the case is that on paper, it's like, yeah, you can consume them. They're edible, but there's also a difference between something that's edible versus something that's, let's say, useful toward what your goals are. So yeah, maybe, for instance, canola oil might be a convenient way of cooking your food, but it might also be having a negative impact on your health overall. So it might make more sense to
Yeah.
choose a different
And
oil to cook with.
the marvel of the manufacturer we have for food, the whole point of adding those things in, because like you once you start to learn, you're like, why the hell did they do this? And so it's like to keep the food longer, to keep
Yeah.
it on the shelves longer. It's all for money. They could give two shits about your health.
Yeah.
So you're gonna find it in like all the healthy foods
Yeah.
that quote healthy, we're talking about quote healthy. And so like you're looking at these protein bars, the Nature Valley bars, the I don't even know what some people be eating nowadays, like just like pre-pancake mix, just
Yeah.
whatever it be. You will see that there's some type of omega-6 industrial seed oil in there.
Hmm.
This is actually, this is funny because we get on this omega-6 train where we can't have seed oils.
Yeah.
That's correct. But flaxseed, chia seed, these are omega-6, okay, fatty acids, but they are actually good for you because they are not devoided from nutrients from the heat press that happen when you have canola oil or palm oil or currant oil or whatever other type of oil that are seeds.
So the issue is not the omega-6 as much as it is,
No,
like trying to take these otherwise, uh, basically, otherwise impossible to remove oils, that can only be taken through like a sort of very unnatural process to get them out, and they just happen to have omega-6. So
yeah,
we don't want to mistake the presence of omega-6 as being the problem, but rather the means by which the oil is extracted from the source.
yeah. In my coaching, in my practice, I do omega tests,
Hmm.
omega-3 tests, and a lot of people are like they're deficient omega-3s, but they have so much omega-6s.
Yeah.
But the omega-6s is from the industrial seed oils inside everyone's food.
Right.
Now you'd look at the problem and be like, okay, I have too many omega-6s. And I'm talking about this because this is where all the science people talk about. You
Yeah.
got to reduce your omega-6s. See, this is where we're going back. Everyone's dogmatic. So they're
Yeah.
like, can't have omega-6s. But it is the industrial seed oils that are, exacerbating your symptoms, giving you the
Yeah.
inflammation, right? Ruin your GI tract, your GI health. And so we don't want to get away from, no omega-6s. We want to have a balance.
Yeah.
So I'm actually making meal plans and stuff because I'm making meal plans for people exactly what they should be eating. I use a balance of monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, and saturated fats. Yes, saturated fats, because that is a building block for your sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone,
Hmm.
your androgens. Okay. And so the way that you can balance out, for a period of time, though, you'd want to, bring up the omega-3s if you just came from a very inflammatory diet because that's filled with omega-6 seed oils. Okay. Because this all plays into gut health. Okay.
Hmm.
If you're eating a diet that's, very pro-inflammatory, which is the Western traditional, American diet, that all just disturbs the microbiome. And so, at a period of time, we want to use omega-3s. Not talk, yes, supplementation, but things like salmon, uh, different types of shrimp, things like that just carry those omega-3 essential fatty acids
Hmm.
like EPA, DHA, and things like that.
Now, you know what? You bring up an interesting point because you talked about meal plans. And I have to say, in my own coaching and consulting and training that I've done with people over the years, I usually don't go into a lot of detail about nutrition. Part of it's because it's something that I find interesting. I know a decent amount about, but other than, let's say, giving blanket suggestions like, how much protein to eat and don't go crazy on junk food and what have you, more than anything, I find the nutritional side of things to be very difficult to coach people on. Whereas like strength training is relatively easy because it's like you do this. when you're done, you get this kind of flood of like, oh, I just accomplished something. I feel a little bit sore. I worked really hard. I'm sweaty. It's like you get the immediate, even if you have to stay consistent for, weeks and months at a time, during and after every workout, you get signs that some sort of a change has happened. And with nutrition or with proper eating, it's like, okay, I just ate a healthy meal. Now I still feel hungry, and there's no discernible change. So, and more than anything, it seems like there's a real art to it. And the other thing is that like, and this is not a perfect analogy, but let's say with training, nobody's really allergic to certain movements. There are like certain movement
Yeah.
patterns everybody has to do in some capacity or another. If you can't, it's because there's a presence of a serious issue, like an injury. Maybe you can't squat because you've injured your knee. That's a very uncommon circumstance, where it's not like a natural circumstance. Whereas there are people who are naturally allergic or sensitive to certain foods. So it's like, in addition to having these other variables, you've also got the emotional component of people have an emotional connection to
Yeah.
eating. Not me, of course, but most people. And how do you handle that when you're helping people with their meal plans? Because in some sense, it's like people's comfort is their food, their socialization is their food. Uh, their food connects to a lot more to their external life than just the nutrition side of it.
Yeah. So a big thing is like, what is the why behind it? You
Hmm.
know, um, I've gotten people like to cry on phone calls because there's a why behind why they would hire me, why they want to even do this for themselves.
Yeah,
And so like we got to always look at that why,
yeah.
and that is our, intrinsic motivator to why we're even doing this,
Hmm.
And the aim is to be solid 90% of the time, you know. Because 10% of the time you can't control life, what's going on. Like I got moms going to baseball games, you got tournaments, you got people working late, all that. But control the controllables, what we can control, okay? And a part of that's the mindset, like you're saying, and how we can get to that is just understanding why are we doing this for ourselves? Because I think that's the biggest motivator that anyone can have. Like them sitting down and understanding to themselves, why am I even doing this? Why do I need to eat this way? you know and so like even like when I'm telling people like I'm not giving you a meal plan. That's not why you're paying for me. That's not why. That it's what this thing is doing for you,
Hmm.
you know getting you out of hypothyroid state, having you lose the stubborn body fat, having you have the energy back to play with your kids. Like all these things are the meal plan. What you're eating is the vehicle to get you there.
Hmm.
And since we in a society has just have pretty much made a relationship between food and like dopamine hit and everything like that, now it's like, oh, I got stress eat, I gotta go eat, or I'm stressing, I gotta go eat, or I want to feel good, so I'm gonna go get some ice cream. And just how we have been raised up. It's actually funny though, because back then that was all right, because the way that they made the food, the way that it was manufactured, it was less processed. There was less things in it. There was less additives,
Yeah.
things like that. Because like, I mean, we look back and we're like, probably your parents, I don't know, probably a little bit before my parents, like the 50s, 40s, like people were eating, in and out or whatever, like technically like burger, fries, ice cream, all that, and they were still slim.
Yeah.
That's not a coincidence, the way that and so like it's sad because like it's like this is how they used to eat. But now, if we eat like that today, you're just going to get fat,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. I can
So,
say, oh no, go ahead and finish, and then I'll throw in some more comments here.
yeah, I was just kind of like going to say, like, so I actually, this is good because food isn't bad. It's what humans do to food that's bad.
Hmm.
Because everyone wants to blame the food, but no one wants to blame how the food is manufactured, made, picked. Okay. And so when we eat a cow that's been, tamed inside of a barn, getting fed candy, get fattened up, and then it goes get killed for it to be eaten, that's a lot different than if you have a cow that's, out in the grass, getting fed, nutrients, running around, getting sunlight and things like that.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's a good analogy there, looking at that. Okay, and so like a majority of people get confused because this is supposed to be a gut health podcast, but all of this stems from what you're eating.
Yeah.
I think it's around 74 like tons of food you digest in your lifetime.
Mm.
And it all starts with the food, the thing that you put in your mouth and goes in there.
Yeah.
That's food or alcohol, whatever, liquids. So this is a big deal. Talking about like how the food is made, how it's industrialized, okay? Because I promise you, if you're listening to this, if you for the next week just ate all organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised, single ingredient, little ingredient foods, you will see a dramatic difference in the way that you feel, your energy levels, your digestion, the way that you get the pumps in the gym, the way that you just have drive for life. You will see 100% 180. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's because the nutrition, and no one wants to talk about this. They're talking about like probiotics you can take, things like that, which are all beneficial, of course, but we can't neglect the nutritional side of things. What are the things that we need to stop doing to help our gut? What are the things that we can do to introduce into our diet that can help our gut?
Mm-hmm.
And all of this ties in together because you eat more than you do many other things for your aka health.
Yeah.
Okay. And so either every food that you put in your mouth pushes you towards your health goal further or pushes you back. Okay. So yeah, all food isn't bad. It's what humans do to food that's bad.
Yeah, and I think your analogy about the fast food is salient, and partially for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think certainly the quality of the food. It seems like people have to keep in mind that the profit motive is what drives any business. It's what drives my business.
Mhm.
It's what drives yours. Obviously, there's a mission and a purpose behind it that gives it a higher meaning, so that it's not just turning over a dollar. But you think,
Yeah.
what is McDonald's trying to do? What is ConAgra trying to do?
Yeah.
They're not evil in the sense that, I don't know, they're not dumping like raw sewage into water. Hopefully not.
No, I don't think Ronald McDonald woke up one day and was like, all right, let me just put all this fake stuff inside my burger and give it to people. That's not what
Sure.
he was thinking.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
It's little by little. And the thing to keep in mind too is that I also think that it's again, it's a slow and steady march in a certain direction, because I remember when I was a kid, my dad would tell us, when we were kids, going to McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, that was like we did it once in a while, and it was like a treat. But I think the other part of the problem is that, like, even if you accept that the ingredients, we now have certain ingredients that our bodies are not designed to be able to digest. Once in a while, it's not going to make a difference. It's like, it's the same thing if you work out once in a while, it's not going to make you fit. But the problem is that people eat that way so much, like they're always stopping at McDonald's, like, they're always getting like their lunch break is always at some fast food place. So
Yeah,
it's,
well, that's not even the fast food too. It's like you're going and you're getting these prepackaged sandwiches. You're getting,
yeah,
you're getting all these bars,
yeah,
and not let alone when we get into like the fitness side, that's just filled with a bunch of empty cows. But
yeah,
then we talk about the fitness side, and you see how because it all blends, but people are being dogmatic. But we go to the functional side. We're like, okay, that's filled with a bunch of additives, artificial sugar, added sugars, artificial sweeteners,
yeah.
all of it. So exactly.
Yeah, it's not just the ingredients, it's also the frequency, and the size. I don't know about maybe the size anymore, because more and more, I periodically I'll find myself in a fast food place, and not very common, but it seems like they're trying to kind of cut down on the portion size, and that's more of a an inflation related thing. But if it helps people to lose weight, because now they're not eating, like an industrial sized drum of fries because they supersized it or upsized it or whatever, maybe that's not the worst. But I also think that there's a certain element of like habit that gets built into our lives, because like you said, it's not just a fast food. It's the stuff that you grab off the shelf, that it's like, oh, this has protein in it, protein's good for me, therefore this bar is certainly going to be healthy for me because it
Yeah.
says so. And it's like a lot of it's a marketing gimmick, and that anything that would be considered healthy is surrounded by a bunch of stuff that's really not.
Yeah, it's unfortunate what we've been to in today's society. Just talking about like there's just so much out there, that like now bars advertise that there's no artificial sweeteners, there's no additives, there's no added sugars and things like that. And so, going back to what we're saying, you need both sides to everything, meaning you need a functional fitness approach. Like, does this meal plan follow my caloric intake for me to hit a specific weight goal?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Does this meal plan have enough macros in it for me to help with XYZ goal? Does this meal plan have enough micronutrients, phytonutrients, fiber, greens, and fruits for me to, have it be anti-inflammatory and still do all the other things I wanted to do?
Mm-hmm.
So, when I'm looking at meal plans and things like that, like I'm looking at a lot of different things, and they're almost called functional foods,
Yeah.
which more people don't look at it like that. They still eat the foods, but they're not really sure about the beneficial properties of the food that it has.
Yeah.
Like eggs having choline in it for it to, obviously help with brain health, or all the other essential, B vitamins for metabolism, or, blueberries and fruit having antioxidants and polyphenols to fight inflammation within the GI tract or radical damage within the body. Like, food is code, food is medicine. It's called nutrigenomics. It's how food, affects your genes. So, all this plays together because it all builds upon like the things that you put in your body will inevitably affect how your gut is.
Very interesting stuff. Now, let's before we wrap up this episode, I'm curious, what are some things that people can do like right now to start to improve their gut health and just see if it has an impact on their mood, their focus, their energy levels, and things like that? Like, what's your go-to stack to tell people to do?
Yeah, number one is follow anti-inflammatory diet, and cut out specific things. So the first thing you want to do is cut out, taper down alcohol. If you can fully eliminate, I suggest it. Next thing is, artificial sweeteners, added sugars, okay, and additives. Top four. Now, if you want to get a little bit deeper and you want to figure out what actually is wrong with me, I'd cut out gluten, wheat, soy, corn, and dairy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'd eliminate those things. After that, I would, like I said, eat a very anti-inflammatory diet, meaning it's more so whole foods, obviously, but coming from great sources. So, and coming from, the less ingredient in the food, the better, usually, is what I like to say. When we're looking at different types of meat, salmon, different types of grains, wild, white, brown, all great. All different fruits are good. Now, another thing is FODMAPs. Stick to a lower FODMAP, for a little bit to see how you feel.
Mm-hmm. And what does that stand for?
I can't tell you off the top of my head right now.
Because I've heard of it too. And I similarly can't think of it off the top of my head.
I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but essentially it's different types of fermented foods that feed into the bacteria within the gut.
Oh, interesting. So you want to stay away from those.
Yeah, so because like if you're someone who's dealing with an imbalance of bacteria in the gut and you just feed it more yeast or more bacteria, things like that, obviously that would exacerbate your symptoms.
And now, I hate to interrupt, but I'm very curious now because this makes me think. And a lot of times we hear fermented foods are good for you, but there are going to be some that might be. You mentioned dairy, trying to stay away from that. So maybe kefir would not be such a great thing, even though there are some benefits due to fermentation. Might not be the thing to start with. Would it be the same with kombucha because there's a yeast component to it?
Exactly. And so it gets confusing out here when you have like this like kombucha tea and things like that with all these probiotics and things like that and pre and pro. And the thing is that yes, those are good with a healthy microbiome, but majority of people have, so much bad bacteria or imbalance of bacteria that you're just feeding it more. So that's why in like the first thing we want to flush out the bacteria within the GI tract, remove the negative things to keep the bacteria balanced. And then you can reintroduce those foods. sauerkraut, kefir, whatever, kimchi, things like that. And so that's why it's a period of time where you want to eliminate things and then reintroduce it.
Very interesting. So, in part, it is, getting rid of the usual suspects. So, getting rid of like let's say the processed sugars,
Processed
alcohol,
food, seed oils, alcohol.
and then also even foods that might in the future be okay. You want to try to get rid of them because you're just trying to tip the balance in your favor. So, maybe gluten won't be a problem at some point in the future, but for right now, maybe it
Yeah.
would make sense to get rid of, as well as some of the other ones that you'd mentioned. Any other things that are maybe surprising benefits to gut health that people don't think much about?
Um, how stressed they are.
Mm-hmm.
If you're continuously sleeping 6 hours a night, trying to go to the gym and train really hard and things like that, that all influences your gut as well.
Mm-hmm.
Pounding a bunch of energy drinks, coffee, caffeine, that disturbs your gut dramatically. But I think a big thing is like people don't realize like that these emotional stress, like we were saying, this trauma stress, all these other types of stress can lead to poor gut health.
Mm-hmm.
IBS, a root cause to IBS is chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, getting our stress under control is definitely like a big thing for, our healing journey for our gut or for gut health. Um, I guess one other thing would just be, um, I wouldn't say no. It's not anything that would be, surprising, but yeah, just
Might be. You never know. Let's hear it.
I what was it? I just looked at my tongue. Just medications are pretty much like depending on what medication you're taking, it could just totally disrupt the microbiome.
Makes sense.
I'm not advocating for you to get off your medication at all. This is not medical advice, but a lot of medications, PPIs for one, women birth control just terrible, like antibiotics terrible. Maybe you absolutely need them, but you know those just disrupt your gut so much, and I see
Yeah.
it so much, your liver health, all of it. So I mean, if you could, try to get off it or whatever, because that is a big contributor to your gut health.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because most Americans, I think, are on some kind of prescription medication.
Yeah,
And
one in, I think it's like 1 in 4, and I
yeah,
think it's four or more.
yeah. Yeah, and so if you think about that, like, and I don't even think that it is, let's say, irresponsible to say, well, you shouldn't be taking these things because it doesn't mean go off them, doesn't mean stop
Yeah,
taking them without your doctor's suggestion. But by definition, if you're taking a medication to fix some sort of an issue, that means that there's an issue. So it stands to reason that doing something that is going to help to eliminate whatever the root cause is, so you don't have to take it anymore. The
yeah,
the operative principle here is that you've got to take the actions that eliminate your need for it before you just stop taking it. So
exactly.
I think that's perfectly fair. And if you think about it, well, I mean, Western medicine is like a wonder because there's so much science behind its efficacy. But I think what people forget is that there's also an art to our health. There's the science side of it, which I think Western medicine in many cases can help us to deduce, whether it's what medications can help stop, this problem or that problem. But then the art of it is like, how do you change your own actions on a day to day basis that are going to allow you to control your vehicle better so that you're not swerving onto the side of the roads and you don't need this pharmacological help just to get through your day-to-day life. In my opinion, that it's perfectly reasonable and not at all anti, Western medicine to say
Yeah,
that these are the steps that you should take. And then when it gets to the point where you need that external help in order to prevent your health from going completely off the rails, then you take some sort of an intervention. I think the problem is that people have a people have a tendency to think that it's that intervention is what they need, and it should in most cases more than likely be just a temporary thing to help maintain their we'll say non-sickness, because I like to think of health as being something a bit more robust where you can maybe take a few hits but you're not completely down for the count. If you have to take a medication, I think by most definitions you're not that healthy. So
Yeah.
That's something that you need to take into consideration.
Yeah. The medications just wreak a ton of havoc on your gut health, microbiome health. So, if you could slowly taper off them if you can, or, above all, correct the real root cause of it. Because that definitely will actually cause, help you in the long run.
Absolutely. Now, where can people follow you online if they want more information on gut health and the optimal interplay of the organs and the various different systems in the body, and probably just some entertaining memes? I'm sure that there are some. You've got some of those floating around.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram is my main source of social media, Diego Reyes Health, all lowercase, DIEGO REYES Health. I'm on X and Twitter, which is Diego Reyes 08. And then I have a website, a company. I own a coaching company called Complete Vitality. You can look it up on your user browser, completevitalitylife.com, all lowercase, Complete Vitality Life. And then I'm also on YouTube, Diego Reyes 04, all lowercase.
Right
So,
on.
yeah.
Very good. Folks, I highly recommend that you follow Diego. He's a very, very smart dude. Got some excellent, excellent pointers on getting your health back on track. And I think, too, that you'll find that your gains in your strength training will probably see a pretty nice boost once the rest of you can actually support all of the hard work that you're doing. So, highly recommend checking out his stuff. Diego, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.